Welcome to the How to Heart Show, helping men reconnect to the heart and empower others as the leaders they were born to be. I'm Vincent. The world needs the raw and authentic men right now. Join us if you're ready to make a change. Hey, what's up, Lions, and welcome to the How to Heart Show. It took so long because we had some issues, but finally we're here and super excited to have this amazing conversation with Robyn McTague, right? That's how I pronounce
Very
it.
good.
So what I like about Robyn is the way we spoke in the past, and she has such a unique way of helping people, but also her story, her background, and going more deep in relationships. So I'm really excited to have her on the show. I had such a good vibe with her, and I decided to have her here. It's going to be one of a really good episodes. So, yeah, Robyn, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, we had a good conversation in the past and looking forward to more.
Absolutely. So, Robyn, can you share with us in a nutshell what you do and who you are?
Yeah, so for me, growing up, there was a lot of uncertainty, instability, and from a young age, I wondered why people did what they did. Like, I couldn't understand why people couldn't be kind and gentle with each other. And so that drove me on a quest to really learn psychology, counseling, conflict resolution, all these different tools to help us to go deeper into who we are and why we do what we do. So I help that both individually, couples, and teams. Not teens, teams. And so small business owners, entrepreneurs, because relationships are everywhere, right? We're born into the world, we're in relationship, and we're not taught how to navigate it. So I love to bring the different kind of science and metaphysical ways of looking at things from a more holistic perspective, where body, heart, head, all our energetics are included. So we're not leaving parts of ourselves out.
And that's what I really like about you, because you include everything. It's not like, oh, we're just human beings and we just talk, but you really make sure everything is aligned. So how was it for you unfolding? What was for you the reason that you wanted to create more relationships and have a better relationship with each other?
Yeah, I just think that, if we are able to understand ourselves, we can have better relationships and we really shift the world, because when we can find that compassion and kindness for ourselves and understand, oh, this is why I do this, and people do things for different reasons. We're not taking it personally, so that we can coexist and get away from the extremes that we're seeing. It's like, where do we meet in the middle instead of how are we so different, right? We've kind of shifted that idea as we've, population has increased, where it's like we're competing rather than co-working together and trying to build a life that's important. Work, home, family, all of that. And because I didn't grow up with that, it was something that really was top of mind. And the more I can help people understand it, the better off everyone is.
So why is communication so important?
Because we come from these old patterns when we were growing up. And so often we just repeat things because those were the models that we had. So we never learned to actually communicate what was important to us. So, for example, in my situation, I saw people dealing with conflict, either expressing it in a rage or not speaking at all. And so that communication wasn't there at all. But when we can say, okay, I can actually speak about what's important to me in a kind of natural, safe, clear way, rather than what we do is often project onto others what we don't want to see in ourselves. So, for example, in a relationship where you've had tension in the past, that comes forward. We haven't dealt with our boundaries in the past. So we have that explosion, or we sabotage the relationship and we don't understand why. So if we can come together with a neutral language, understanding what's important to each other, and be present to what's going on instead of bringing everything else into the picture and those old patterns, seeing them for what they are, then that shifts everything. And we have harmony, we have more relaxed way of being, and people are attracted to us more because they like that, rather than going around, in this place where we feel people are out to get us, or we have to be so defensive. And that's hard, because who's going to let you in if you've got this wall up about opening yourself to being open to what other people have to say and not just what's important to you?
So is it really being vulnerable? Because I've seen it with myself when I had to learn to communicate. I can be an introvert. So for me, talking to people and really express myself was really scary, because I felt really vulnerable talking to people and share my secrets and really share what's going on. Is there something that you see a lot in people, the difference between introverted and extroverted?
I would say introverted and extroverted, because there's a range of everything, right? And depending on the situation, like I can be more extroverted in certain situations, because I'm really interested in community and having people feel accepted and safe in a situation. But I need a lot of alone time too. So my natural tendency is introverted, but I've been able to shift that because I was such a shy and quiet kid growing up. I've learned to be able to be more with people, and I have my limits. But yes, there is that place of feeling vulnerable. But we have to learn to build our capacity. This is something that I think a lot of the self-help leaves out, is that we might have a certain capacity. I have this range and this other person has this range. So, how can I do that gradually, building my safety, building my confidence, feeling that we're having an exchange? Because what I found when I started to learn about my own boundaries was I'd either say everything, which wasn't good, because then I felt like I was a specimen. People didn't have the same experiences I had growing up. So I was like this anomaly. And that didn't feel good, because I didn't know I could trust them. So we're building trust with ourselves. We're building our boundaries out. We're seeing if there's an exchange with the other person, reciprocity. Is there reciprocity? Are they willing to go to that level with us? We start here, and then it's like, okay, they're talking about themselves as well. I can go to the next layer, and maybe that's your capacity in the moment. And this is where the introvert comes in, and it may be that's enough for now. We've had a great conversation. I need to head off and do something else. So we take that time for ourselves, and we might process it, because for some of us, we need that time, especially when we don't grow up with understanding our feelings. It can take some time to just kind of process that, see how we felt about it. So I don't have to make decisions in the moment. I can see, how did I feel with that person? And then next time we're together, can we build that out a bit more capacity? So really understanding what that is for us.
And what really came to me is also, as an ex-nice guy, I wanted to please everybody, and it took so much energy. It took so much effort to go through the same door with everybody. But I realized it's too much work. It brings this mask. I was trying to have this fake identity and try to. I didn't want to have any conflict with people. So, is it something that you also seen with clients and what you see today, that people are really scared to avoid conflict instead of resolving them?
Absolutely, because that's how we're usually trained, right? We don't have those models in our life that show us how to do it, or that it doesn't have to be the extremes. So really setting yourself up to be able to have success is it starts with learning some skills, right? Like you talked about the boundary setting. Most people don't understand that because we weren't given that as kids. And so when we start out creating those boundaries, often we're kind of extra pushy because maybe we didn't hold that boundary before. So now we have to be really clear and follow through before that other person is going to accept that boundary because they walked over it before, right? Because we were people pleasing. So building that to be able to say, okay, we can come to this agreement. Like I find the more that we can give context, the more that we can express what's going on for us and say, yeah, I'm nervous about this. I'm scared right now because this is really important to me and I value our friendship, I value our relationship, whatever that is. But if I don't, this is going to simmer. And this is what happens, right? It becomes irritation and then it becomes the explosion. And it's not when that particular thing is happening, it's about all the other things in the past. Like I used to go through this in my marriage, and it would be, I would ask, I could see, I could feel that person was annoyed about something and they wouldn't talk about it, even though I would try different ways to bring that out. But then, like, would have this cycle of like an annual thing where there'd be this blow up. And I would say, this isn't necessarily about this thing. This is things that we've had issues with in the past that we haven't been able to talk about. And at that time, we ended up going our separate ways just because it wasn't healthy for either of us. And, we each went our different ways. Myself, I did more inner work and more training to understand that we can try our best and sometimes we have to walk away. So that can be hard for the people pleasers because there's that part of us, a really young part of us, that wants people to get along. Maybe there was tension in your family and you were the kind of middle person. Parents and siblings do this all the time where you become the peacemaker. And if we've taken on that role, and there's lots of different roles that we take on, but that peacemaker is like trying to make everyone happy and to our own detriment. And I know for myself, having dealt with cancer, that I was doing everything for everyone else, but where was I in that picture?
Yeah, I resonated with so much because what I usually did was when there was a conflict, I would first thing go to my head. I would say, okay, what should I do? What should I say? And it was eating me up. I just every single day I was eating myself up. And I went to go to bed and just talking to myself, how can I solve it? How can I do this? Blah 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 blah. But I never did anything about it. I always avoided it. No, no, he's busy or she's busy. No, no, I will do it another day. And it got so, the tension got so worse and worse. It was a build up. And then I was postponed it for weeks and weeks. And then it was just gone. But I felt when I looked at him or her, I felt so much tension. And it's like, why can't I just go up to him or her and just talk about it? But I was so afraid of the conflict that this person would explode or would be angry or upset. And I said, I have to change this. I really have to learn to effectively communicate with people. And I know why I avoid it because in my childhood, when somebody got really angry at me, he or she exploded. So I was in this trigger, in this phase mode, like, oh, so this is too much. The trigger response from the childhood came back. So I didn't do anything. And also, like you said, I never learned how to communicate properly or how to deal with emotions or people that are really emotional or really intense. So I told myself, if there's a conflict or a problem, I have to solve it right away. I need to walk up to this person and ask, like in a proper way, like, hey, if it was my fault, to say, hey, I'm sorry that I did this. Can we talk about it? Or if she doesn't want to respond, like, okay, I understand your boundaries. If you want to talk, we can talk. I still leave it open for them to come. But what I've learned is really try to be calm. It's not easy, but that's the best what you can do, right, Robyn? To
Yeah,
really be.
absolutely. Is finding those triggers. That's the first part. It's always awareness. So if we're not aware of our triggers or what's going on, this is where we blame others and we shame ourselves. So these very uncomfortable emotions that come up that we haven't been taught to work with and to understand and just allow them to be, right? We shut them down and that's where they become the shadow and we don't want to look at it. And it's very elusive to us. So that place of understanding, yes, I might be triggered, and learning to have value enough for ourselves to say, I matter. And that person, they may react, but it's not my responsibility, right? We so often are overly responsible for other people and their feelings instead of saying, this is me, this is my responsibility to me, and they're responsible for themselves. But that's a very mature attitude that we have to build towards, where especially as kids, we kind of leak our energy to other people to be liked, to be seen, to be valued. And the more that we can say, I'm okay on my own, that I matter and they matter, it just might be that we can't come to agreement on things and be okay with that. But yeah, the more that we can be calm, and if things are escalating, there's nothing wrong with saying, this does not feel comfortable right now. Can we take some time away, our own kind of time out, and come back at a later date and agree? Because the more that we can say, this is both important to both of us. I want to stay in relationship. And if we have had some kind of rupture in the relationship, making amends that mean something, not just, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But we see these patterns, right? People are late all the time or whatever they do, and we have that frustration. So it doesn't have to be a big thing. The more we can start with the smaller things and build our capacity and our knowledge and our learning, and to stay steady during that, the more we can deal with the bigger things when they come up. But these small things are the day-to-day things that we really need to focus on. Am I present in my body? Can I feel my feet on the floor? Can I just take that breath that will keep me here instead of running away, which is my reaction in this moment, or thinking that they're the bad person and not thinking about my own responsibility in what I bring to the situation.
And what can people do when they face someone that's really aggressive or that's really triggered really fast? Is it something you can say or something that you can do? Because if you're dealing with a narcissist, then it's difficult, right?
It is. And this is where our discernment comes in, and your safety and being aware. And if it's not safe, to get yourself out of that situation. So it may be even like a physical thing where, like, I was in a store that was closing and there was a bunch of us in a lineup, and this woman kind of swooped in and tried to go past the lineup, and the woman behind me like called her out. And so this woman was super aggressive, and she came over to this woman. They were like this. And I just lightly touched her shoulder to kind of bring her back in her body, because she wasn't at the moment. Because I could just see like she had this rage, and it was like, that may not be for you. Like, I have different systems I use. So I was okay in that moment because I could see this other woman could have been hit by this person. So I just lightly put it there, and she calmed down, went back. She wasn't happy, but at least she wasn't going to hit the woman. So it may be, I need to leave. My safety is important to me. And so if that person keeps repeating that every time you're together, you have to consider for yourself what is more important, your peace of mind or this relationship, because relationships don't all last, right? We go through different phases in our life, and people come and go, and that's just a natural part. And I think we kind of get held on to that idea that we should be able to fix it. We should have these relationships for life, and it's not necessarily so.
That's very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing, Robyn. What I wanted to ask is, because trauma, because the way of people are behaving when they're aggressive, when they're explosive, or they don't know how to deal with conversations, or it triggers them. What do you think is causing it? Is it really trauma that they traumatized? Is it really that they had bad experiences, or their parents were really hard on them, so they developed coping mechanisms just to keep people like away from them, so they don't have to deal with their aggression or how they deal. So what do you think are it's causing that society is now we're getting so aggressive? It's now only the me, me, me mentality. I don't care who you are. I only care about me. What do you think is causing it?
Yeah, it's a lot of different things, but yes, everything starts with where we were born, right? We come into the world, we kind of have a temperament. Science is showing us that we come in with a certain temperament, and then our environment helps to kind of show us how we kind of express that. And so, two of the biggest emotions that our society is really bad at working with is grief and anger. And because there's this kind of thinking that I only have enough for me, I need to get my share, right? This competitiveness that has really come forward. And leaders, people who are saying, well, it's all about me, then we see that model and we think that's the right way to be. We think that's success. So there's this place of, well, I'm entitled to this because this is what I want. And I see this with people everywhere where there's just like, well, really, can you think about the greater good or the group that you're with? It's like, no, I don't care if it's right or wrong. This is what I'm going to do. So there's a sense of what's important to me is important enough to override everything. So part of it is not having those relationships, or having relationships in a way that have us believe that. So it could be that way of, this is my defense mechanism. So we have different ways of working with that. And in the Enneagram, which is a psycho-spiritual tool, we get into, what are those maps of the world that we have? And this is how I deal with it. One type might be more aggressive, another might be the withdrawal type. So we have different ways, but it really comes down to the patterns that we learn. And if we don't learn healthy ones, we're going to learn what we see. And if that's reinforced over time, that maybe aggression gets me something. When I worked corporately, we used to call it the squeaky wheel. So if they just keep complaining enough, then they're going to get what they want. And to me, because I'm so focused on building community and having people really appreciate each other for the uniqueness that we each bring. Yes, we have all the same needs, but how we express is different. And I find that challenging. And just to kind of be curious about it. This is one of the biggest things with conflict resolution, is be curious. How can I say, well, why is that important to you? Or how do you see it? to get that different perspective, because to them that behavior makes sense, but they may not have the awareness. And sometimes that will stop them in their tracks and they'll kind of think about it. Other people might not. They just, this is what I want and I'm going after it. But really, there's something they're not able or willing to be able to express, to deal with that anger, that grief, whatever it is. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the shadow, the kind of elusive parts of ourselves that we've said, that doesn't feel right. I don't like it, so I'm not going to look at it. So, for example, jealousy. Who wants to feel jealous? Not many people, right? So it's like, I'm not going to look at it. But when we can bring that jealousy forward to say, oh, okay, have that dialogue and say, what's important to you? What do you really want out of that? What's the positive thing that you want out of this feeling? And what I saw for myself was, it's just something I desire. So it can take the charge off things and we can integrate it into ourselves. So we can say, oh, yeah, that's something I desire. It's not affordable or not in my plan right now with the time I have. But yeah, it looks interesting, and a lot of us have the shiny object syndrome, where we like to learn and grow and just do more and more.
Robyn, what I really like about you is you're so calm. You can explain it so well. So how did you come at that level that you're so calm? And also, how were your relationships and the relationships with yourself?
Yeah, that was a huge learning curve. So for me, I was kind of going along, learning, like doing all the intellectual things. All the training really helped me to feel safe for the intellectual part. That's how I kind of led in the world. But it wasn't until I really dealt with cancer that I saw that even with all these tools, what was missing was the feelings. So it was like this deep excavation. Like I spent 6 months really going deep with myself to bring up the trauma of, my mom's suicide attempts, to feeling alone, to abuse, to all these different things that had happened to me, to understand that I'm an emotional being, right? We so often dismiss our humanity and we feel shame around being human, but we're all the same. But that's kind of shut down in us. So the more that I started to look at that, to integrate it, to spend time with myself, I learned a meditation course I teach that helped me to go deep. I got energy shields. So I wasn't picking up everyone's energy. I could understand what's me, what's someone else. And then the Enneagram really helped. I love the spiritual work. And to me, the Enneagram work helps me to really ground in being human and helps me to bring those pieces together along with some other tools I use. So through that process, I learned to get braver, more courage, use that part of myself to step out, to be seen, to not be so afraid, and to express who I was. And that was interesting, right? I had to, again, build capacity. And it's an ongoing process. We're never complete as humans. And it's just like showering. Every day I do my meditation to start my day. If I'm feeling challenged by someone, taking that breath in the moment. Is this reminding me of someone else or my past that's triggering me? Is it I'm not being honest here, or I'm feeling there's no integrity in the situation? So really using questioning in a different way rather than turning it on myself and blaming myself or finding ways that I'm going to fix it, looking at it as a two-way street, that we each bring ourselves to the equation, and this is me and this is you. So it's a much healthier way to to decide what's important to me and make those choices.
That's really impressive. And what really came to mind was how difficult was your healing journey? Because what I see now with a lot of people, they don't want to go on that journey. They don't want to heal themselves. They just put it on the side. It's like, yeah, I will deal with it when I have time, or I'm too busy right now. But they just, the trauma is in the driver's seat. Things that has happened to them, to the people, and they don't want to face it. So how for me, my journey was really difficult, like everybody else. So how was your healing journey?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. And what I had to remind myself every time is emotions come, and if I allow them, they process through really in about 90 seconds, right? We get that wave, and there might be another emotion comes. But the more I can stay with it, the easier it is because I'm not pushing it down, right? We talk about spiritual bypass. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to feel happy. Well, that doesn't do anything for our internal part of us that feels the conflict because we know. And we see it in our relationships. We see it how we sabotage things in our life. You know, we talk a lot about authenticity and how can we be authentic if we don't know ourselves? And that's what's scary to people is going inward to kind of see what's there. They're afraid of what they'll see. They'll have this emptiness. They'll have this awful person. We're human. We make mistakes. We learn and grow. It's just like a child that learns to walk. We wouldn't fault them for falling down, right? It's like you get back up and do it again. And that's what we kind of forget is this isn't just one time. This is like allowing it, having the tears when we need them, having the screaming if we need to. Like I would sometimes sit in my car or something and just scream. It's like I just needed to get that out because I find for myself to connect to my body, I need to have movement or something. So I'll go for a walk or I'll go out to nature because in the Enneagram, we have what we call 3 intelligence centers, the body, the heart, and the head. And if one of those is offline because we have a preference, we're not fully using all parts of ourselves. We need to ask, you know, how's my body right now? What's going on in my heart? And that can feel scary because I might not know. How can I just be with what is coming up? Or maybe there's some conflicting emotion, or maybe it's something that I don't want to feel. How can I just stay present and say, okay, I can stay here right now. My capacity is 3 minutes. Be with that. Head center is noticing that stillness that we often don't even notice it's there because we're so busy with our thoughts. We're so busy with figuring the next thing out. And that comes back to communication. The more that we can actually stop and listen instead of figuring out what we're going to say next, the more we're going to have a natural flow.
Thank you for sharing, Robin. And what the question came up to me for what can you say to the men that are listening there right now and they dealing with emotions, they're dealing with trauma, they're dealing with frustration and anger. What can you say to them for them to start working on themselves and don't have to get run by the emotions? Because I'm highly sensitive, I'm also an empath, so for me it was really difficult to understand the emotions because I had days that when I was angry and I didn't know what I was angry about.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so I don't understand. And I just got more angry and upset because I didn't want to feel like this. But later on I had to accept. I had to accept that I'm an empath, I'm highly sensitive and have, like you said, meditation or put a shield around yourself energetically so you're safe. But what can you tell men that are dealing with this? What can you tell them?
Yeah, the first thing is starting to identify your emotions. And because there's usually a progression, right? Like with anger, it might just be an irritation, it might be something minor, can be resentment, these kinds of things. And then it gets into this kind of full blown anger and sometimes rage. So, finding healthy ways to express it once we know what it is. So, that might be because you're talking about being an empath, it might be spending time on your own, like noticing that and getting out into nature. If you're into physical activity, getting out for a walk or a run. And that's very grounding. So, we're not separating out the emotion from ourselves. So often we kind of see it out there rather than it's part of me. And so that's the challenge, is to, okay, this is the emotion, this is what's going on with me. What are the sensations I'm feeling? What's going on in my body? What is my heart telling me? What are my thoughts telling me? And kind of questioning those so that you can start to accept that this is part of you and not something outside of yourselves. Because when we see it outside of ourselves, we're going to put it onto other people and create those conflicts. So it's really about, even if it's 5 minutes a day, the more that we can check in with ourselves more. But if it's 5 minutes at the beginning of the day to check in, end of the day before you go to bed, and just say, what was going on for me today? What were the things that went really well? And what are the things that I really didn't like how I acted there? But I'm going to accept myself that that's what happened. And that probably goes back to something deeper that I need to kind of spend some time with. And if you don't have time, then, making a date with yourself to do that. And you're worth it, because as we've both seen in our life, the more that stacks up and gets pushed down, the more there's going to be explosion, the more there's going to be something happen that is going to be worse, whether it's in your physical, mental, emotional health or connections. People in families, we see this where they don't talk to each other anymore. I had a family member that didn't talk to me for 3 years because I brought up something from the past. And I wasn't blaming. I was just saying, this was really difficult. And I'm wondering how you were with it. But it was taken a totally different way. And we did come back together. But I had to have enough love for myself, because really that's what we're coming back to, is understanding what love is. It's not about getting people to be my partner, to be happy about everything I do. It's about loving me for who I am right now, in the pain, in the whatever it is that's going on. And how can I just be kind? For people starting out with meditation, I talk about finding something that you love to help you kickstart that feeling. So maybe it's a small child, maybe it's a small animal, maybe it's nature. Is there something that kind of evokes that feeling so you can see and feel, and whatever your sight, whatever your natural abilities are, to tune to that? Because we're all vibration. So this helps us to see, yeah, I can be really angry, I can be really sad, and I can see this breadth of emotion where I can notice love too. And it doesn't have to be directed at something to feel love. I can learn to bring that in for myself.
Thank you so much for sharing, Robyn. And what really came to me is the self-love, and that's something that we can discuss later. But I want to go a little bit deeper into the masculine and the feminine, because now there's so much confusion. Men also being pushed into their feminine, women are pushed in the masculine, and we have both the masculine and the feminine energy. So how important is it for men and women to be functioning in their role?
Yeah, and sometimes we don't like those words, so we can use yin and yang, whatever is appropriate for you. Like people have different words that they like. So it's just that difference in expression and coming back in more inward. So sort of like that introversion, extroversion, right? And there's different capacities and continuum there. So if we don't have that other piece, we're missing out on something. So maybe, and we're not going to feel safe enough to express it. So the more that, say, I'm really, the feminine part of me really feels that connection. I feel that kind of nurturing energy, which I had to learn because not being nurtured well by my mother, I didn't know how to do that for myself. And so I had to really look at that. And it's like, how can I bring that nurturing energy in for myself? So this is men and women. So whether it's, or non-genders, and trying to get away from the binary kind of way of thinking. So it doesn't matter what what you label yourself or call yourself. It's all the same. It's about that part of you that can bring the nurturing, the kindness, that gentleness, because they're traditionally seen that way, but they're kind of more that internal piece. Whereas with the yang and the masculine way of thinking has always been that stepping forward, being out in the world and really expressing. But the more that we can see that they're both really the same sides of the same coin, that we need all of it. And the more that we can say, yeah, this is the breadth of what a human is. And how can I accept that and get away from the stereotypes? Because we get caught into these archetypes and stereotypes, and say, well, what is it about that I like, that I dislike? Is it a part of myself that I'm just not willing to look at? And, we see this with different phobias around people. It's parts of ourselves that we don't feel comfortable with, so we exclude people. And so the more holistic I am in accepting those parts and being curious, maybe it's going for a massage, that's nurturing to me, because we all need touch. And if we don't, then there's a problem. We can have issues. Like I know for myself, I had to do some of those things to have me in my body, but also that touch is so important. We see this with babies. If they don't get touch, they die. So it's again accepting our humanness, that we are all these parts. And the more that I can accept them in myself, the more I accept them in others, and the easier life is. So it's really exploring and curiosity.
I agree. For me, it was also the same. Not really, I agree with exploring, but what I struggled with a lot was I was really feminine. So by saying that was I was really too nice, also towards women. If saw something that I saw somebody that I was attracted to, I would treat her. I put her on a pedestal. So she was like, "Oh, she's so amazing," and I treat her so well. And I learned later on, I learned that I also show masculinity, because if I'm so much in my feminine side and not in my masculine, she will take on the role of the masculine. So she will be the man, if I can say it like that. So she will take the role as the man. And there was so much confusion. I saw it also with my ex-relationship. When I was with her, she was so masculine and so dominant, and I was so in my feminine side, and I didn't do anything to be masculine. But I want to touch on with the masculine and feminine is because if there's no balance in the masculine and the feminine in the relationship, there is chaos. Because I'm not in my role as a man and she is not in a role as the feminine. So if I say, let's go for a walk, I take the lead. I will take the lead as a man. But if she says, no, I don't want to go for a walk, I still go into my feminine and say, okay, let's go for a walk later. I'm not pushing her. I'm not forcing her. But it was so difficult for me to really go into the masculine side of me, really, because we have the balance. We have the masculine and the feminine inside of us. It's also with you, Robyn. You have also the masculine and the feminine.
Mm-hmm.
And for you, you were really disconnected from your feminine, and I was really, really disconnected with the masculine. So it's really important to have the balance, right?
Very much so, because that's what we're going to have, is those extremes in relationships, instead of being able to negotiate and just come together as humans and say, this is what's important to me right now, and this is what's important to me. And, how do we negotiate that to spend our time together, our time apart, all these different things. But if I feel so needy that I need to have someone take the lead, I need someone to be able to, something that's in the news these days recently is men who want the woman to feel the emotions in the relationship. And they come up with some term that I didn't like, but I thought that was interesting, because as we break apart these stereotypes and gender and all these different things, where we have more fluidity and get away from this non-binary to a more different way of looking at things, the more we have options, the more we have the ability to really have something that's important to us and say, and I found that in past relationships, I feel like I'm doing all of this, or I'm doing all of this, whether it's something physical, emotional, mental, whatever it is. And that doesn't feel good to me. So having that honesty to say, would you be able to come up with something for us to do? Because I feel I'm taking the lead on this all the time. And then we can get away from the gendering and the blaming. So the more that we feel comfortable in those different parts of us, and we can, take the lead with that, or go along with what that person says, have the compromise to say, yeah, I'm willing to not be in the lead today, you're going to see a different relationship, because then you can go deeper, because you've already started that basis.
But also, if the man takes the lead, you can also relax more in feminine, right?
Yeah, whatever we do, right, that allows us to really get to what is our natural state. So that, I like to lead in this area. And, some of us are natural leaders, and I definitely have been, I think, my upbringing was to be very kind of in that yang, expressive, to be able to survive and get things done, because no one else was going to do it for me. So it really depends on how we were brought up, what the situation was, and being able to say, feel free to lead, the more we can bring that different expression, those different parts of ourselves forward.
I like it with the yin and yang, because you can be both in flow. So you can both be in flow and how you want to go and you want to move. You're not forcing it. If she feels she wants to take the lead on some things, that's fine. And if I take the lead and she doesn't, it's also fine. But it doesn't. My point is that men are now afraid to take the lead. Men, they're now waiting for women to take charge. For now to say, okay, let's go here, or let's do this. And when men waiting for approval, for the green light, for okay, now it's safe for me to say something. Now it's for me safe to go somewhere that I want to do. So why I want to bring this up and have this conversation with you, Robyn, is really the yin and yang, the balance. Still feel safe to take charge and not being. If you have a partner that says if you want to go left and she's constantly beating you and she's like, no, I want to go right, and then you need to consider if she's the right person for you or not. If it's toxic, you need to say, okay, this is not going to work. But the balance, it's really, really important, right? It's really a balanced, healthy relationship.
I think about it more as harmony rather than balance.
Oh yeah,
Balance is kind of the teeter-totter, right?
yeah,
We're
yeah, yeah.
trying to
Agree.
balance, and we can never balance anything. Never,
No.
sometimes work has to be more important. Sometimes my leisure has to be more important, whatever it is, or the focus on my health. Um, but the more we have harmony, it's a flow. It shifts over time. We shift over
Yeah.
time. The only thing constant is change. But as humans, we don't like change, so we're in a difficult spot, right? It's this anomaly. These opposites. The more that we can sit with the opposites, the more something new can come forward. So yeah, I have the masculine, the yang, I have the feminine, the yin. If I just hold those and know that those are both parts of me, what can come forward? Like what a beautiful transition into a different choice of making in our life. And that's how we go through, right? We don't make one decision and that's that for life, but sometimes we think like that. Oh, I have to make this decision and that's the same thing for the rest of my life, instead of in relationships taking that courage to be honest and saying, things are working really well and I've noticed this is the pattern we've come into, and I'm doing this and you're doing that, and I'm really scared to talk about this, but are you willing to do it? And that's where you can say, if they're toxic and they say, no, this is the way it is, are they the right person? Or are they willing to do something about it?
I like that, to be honest and vulnerable. I feel like that's something that I have to learn also when I want to date women. Also, I need to be more honest. If I feel scared, I have not to say, "Oh, I'm so scared," that I say, "Okay, I feel scared. I feel scared to talk to you." But it's not weakness. It's really being vulnerable. It's being open of that I actually feel it. And what I like about you, Robin, is really the heart. It's really go back to it and what you feel. If I'm scared to talk to her, I can say that. I can say, "Hey, I feel afraid or scared to talk to you," or if I have this job interview, I say I'm really nervous doing having this conversation. But we try to put this mask on and say, well, I will hide it so nobody will see it. And I feel like that's what we need to do more. Open up, share what we feel, and also we don't kill the heart if we just keep it to ourselves and and just let it run.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. If we're pushing, pushing, pushing all the time, how are we ever receiving? How
Mhm.
are we going to receive anything if we're just going to be out there and pushing, pushing? So it's like that place of when we can actually tune into that vulnerability and our heart, there's a place of innocence that opens up where we can just be present to what's here and still be that leader, still have use that life force, because really that's what it is. It's this life force that we want to express. And so the more that we can do that with heart, that beautiful vulnerability and innocence comes forward, because we're just being who we are, and that's our true authentic self. So the more we can do these, and we know we're not going to be perfect, we're not going to do it 24/7. These are parts of us that we're if we're committed to ourselves, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with others, this is what we're working towards, is to bring more of that in.
That's really powerful. Yeah, I really like that. That's something that I have to learn as well, to really the self-love, but also having meaningful conversations and relationships with other people. I feel the tendency to judge people like, oh, she's this or he's that, and I don't give them an opportunity to be vulnerable to me. I don't receive. I just push it like this is my opinion and this is what I think how it should go, but I don't open up. I don't feel, or I don't, how can I say, I don't let them in as humans. I see them as just, well, people, and
They're
I,
things. We objectify them, and that's what's happening in
exactly.
our society, right? It's lumping these people in together. They're all the same. Well, that's how racism starts, because we're individuals. Yes, I might have some triggers, but how can I see their humanity, their spirit? Because we all have
Exactly.
that. And I want them to see that in me. So, how can I start first and bring that forward? So, it's a very powerful way to be, and to say, yeah, it's important. And that's part of the work I do with the motivational map, because we think about conflicts in relationships, and it's a personality conflict. Often it's more about what's important to us, what motivates us, what energizes us. And so when we can bring in neutral language around that, like I found that for myself, because when I worked corporately, I was working full time, teaching the meditation on the side. Lunchtime was for fitness. So I saw people who wanted more of my time that were more relationship based. I saw them as needy, and I had to shift that perspective. And this map gave me that aha of how I saw that. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur and working with people, it's all about relationship. So it was really important to see that. Same, there's lots of things that we see, like the people who are the stars, right, that are out there in social media. We might have that reaction. I don't like them, but we don't know why.
The thing that I want to touch on this, Robyn, is what I see with myself. I need to be more open up to people. So if I see somebody that I feel that I want to talk to, I just talk to them, start a conversation, be interested, be curious of who they are. And if it doesn't resonate, or I don't feel like it's not going anywhere, I can say, well, it's nice meeting you. And I've learned on my journey also with this podcast and as an entrepreneur, connection is so powerful, but also so important, because I wanted to do everything alone. I wanted to be this lone wolf. I wanted to figure it out all by myself, do this podcast all by myself, but realized I cannot have a podcast or really amazing guests like you if I don't start a connection, or I don't start a conversation, or if I want people to help me on my podcast, I need to start talking to them. So I had to learn to really, as an introvert and dealing with triggers, that I have to start a conversation. I also did deep healing as well to feel more comfortable with my skin, of who I am, and standing in my power. But it took a long, long time, and I've really learned that connection is the most important, besides from the heart. But we not just with other people, but with yourself, that I want to touch on a little bit later. But the connection, right? It's so important to have meaningful connections with people, and can really open your world.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we kind of feel untethered, right? We don't feel connected to ourselves. We see this epidemic, as they're calling it, with loneliness. And that starts with ourselves. We often feel like we've abandoned ourselves because we've given ourselves away to other people. We haven't followed through on maybe the career choice we wanted because we had to be the savior of the family and be that person that they wanted. Like, there's so many things that we do where we just give ourselves away, give our power away, and we feel that in our heart, that self-abandonment, and it's painful. But the more that we can just be with it and say, yeah, I'm loving myself through this, I can make a different choice now. I'm going to choose for me. Like, maybe I'm going to have that connection with other people. I'm going to find some different groups to hang out with. I'm going to check out something different. And maybe some of the people that want to drag me down, like the crab pot, where the crab's going up and the crabs don't want them to get out, so they're pulling them down. To have people like that in my life that don't want me to change, don't want me to grow. And maybe I'll invite them along. Are you interested in doing something different? And if they say no, it's like, okay, maybe that's not the person. But yeah, having that different shift in perspective to say, I can make connection. We can. We often feel afraid. Like you said, it's like that fear comes up, and it's like, What am I really afraid of? Is it the rejection? Is it that I'm going to give myself away again? Like, what is it that I'm actually afraid of? Spending that time with yourself, I find, is important before you maybe go to a new event that you haven't been to before. So, how do I want to feel when I've come away from there? What do I want to do? Do I want to connect with one person maybe and just have a more in-depth conversation with them? Or do I want to meet like 3 people and see kind of who clicks with me? So really having that kind of childlike innocence, wonderment of like, what's going to happen?
I like that mentality. I also have to do that as well. If I go somewhere, or I go to an event, or I go to a party, like, with who can I have a connection with? With who can have start a conversation? Also with my dating coach, he said always, from who can you learn? Or from who can you create something together, or maybe a business, or lovers, or friendships? I don't know if I don't have a conversation with them. I don't know if I just stand by myself and just hope for people to talk to me, because that's what I did. I was hoping for people to see me and they come to me and start a conversation. But as a man, I think if I want something happen, I have to take action. I have to start the conversation. If you want to create a business, you have to take action. You have to start. So I really like that what you share with us, Robyn. So thank you so much. And the last thing that I want to share or ask before we go into the self love is fight. Because a couple of years ago, I was walking in my town and I heard um, a couple screaming and yelling with each other. And what I was hearing was, "You don't listening to me," or you are not listening to me," because they were fighting and shouting. But what I heard was, "You're not listening to me." So why are we fighting? Why are we not listening?
Yeah, we want to be seen and heard. And so often we don't feel that way. So this is kind of that over expressiveness. It's like, I want you to know what's important to me, and I don't feel you understand me. Um, and it's like, come whatever way it's going to come, I'm going to do it until you can actually hear me. But the problem is we've tuned out, so we're never going to hear that person. But that's often what they saw in their own family, that this was the way to make it happen, which of course it doesn't. It might be in the moment, that person might say it in the moment just to feel safe and get out of the situation. But the thing is, we get entrenched in our ideas of the way it has to be, and then we it escalates and doesn't come to a good resolution. Usually no resolution, right? We go in our corners after that and we kind of lick our wounds, but nothing changes. And that's why you see in counseling and stuff, it's like being able to say what's important to me. So it's like I statements, learning, the non-violent communication. But it's like we don't have those skills. Most people don't. And science shows that when we're triggered and we don't know what to do, we fall back to those old behaviors. It's the same as parenting, right? And in some ways, we're parenting ourselves to be able to do it differently, because it's like, yeah, this is the way to do it, but is it helpful? So when you're not in that extreme situation, can I step back and say, how helpful was that? Did I really get what I want? Probably not. But are we open to asking ourselves that, instead of just constantly blaming the other person? Because that's what they're doing. It's like, it's all about me. You're doing something wrong, instead of seeing we both are bringing something to this problem that escalates it. Because if that other person walked away, all the thunder would go out, right? They'd just kind of, it's like, okay, no one to argue with now. But that's how we think it has to
But
be.
we don't look for the win-win situation. We only look at what do I gain, what do I win. Because when I was listening to you saying, when you were saying that, I was going into my head and say, why can we not, if there's a conflict, if there's a problem, why can we not, okay, say, okay, just let's stop. I know you're upset, I know you're angry, but what do you ask, what is this person wants? Because what I heard when they were screaming, it was, you are not listening to me, and you are not listening to me. But if they just stopped and say, okay, let me share your story first. I want to hear what you want to say, and she will tell me so she can vent, and I could don't be angry, or I can be judgmental. Just say, okay, just share with me. I will listen, and then I'll say, okay, thank you so much for sharing, and this is how I feel about it. So I share, and then she needs to listen, and then you can make a plan, because maybe something that she's frustrated about and she told him, but he never did change anything, and maybe he was caught up with work and he had so much to deal with, but he didn't want to be bothering her, so there was no communication about it. But if they maybe start sooner, if he said, well, I'm dealing with this problem at work, she will know, she will understand, and maybe she'll say, do you need some help, or do you need something that I can do for you to that you need to go through? But there's always this rage and always this fight and this temper and this anger. And what I've learned with myself is I have to listen more. Still, I'm listening to my guests and also when I talk to other people, but really listen. Listen to myself, what you mentioned, listen to your heart, listen what the conversations what you have and also what's going through, but really listen to the other people, to the other person, especially when you are in a relationship with somebody. It's so important, right, Robin, to listen to each other.
Absolutely. And when you're escalated that high, you're not going to have a rational conversation. So just
No,
remember that this is where you need time to regulate yourself again. You've totally gone into that emotional reaction, and your physiology needs time to reset. So that's not the time to have the conversation. Like you said, if we can do it at the beginning before it escalates, great. But if it has escalated, being able to walk away and said, let's meet tomorrow or something. But we need
yeah,
to allow ourselves to let that the different things go through our body, and to find ways to regulate, whether we're back to our breathing or walking, something to come back into our body and bring that escalation down. But again, like you said, if we can start and be honest about those things and deal with them at the time when we have the communication. And sometimes we think someone has heard us, like you were saying, like, have I really listened? And one of the skills that you learn in conflict resolution is and counseling is to repeat back, not verbatim, but like, what did you hear me say? And it's like, I don't know, I'm dating myself, but the old telephone can and the string. And there used to be a game where you'd start with a sentence and then it'd go around the room and it'd come back something totally different. So the more that we can say, okay, what did you hear? What was your understanding of what I said? And then instead of getting mad or angry that they didn't hear you correctly, you can say, yeah, this part was what I was saying, and this is the other part that maybe I didn't express well enough. So this is what I actually meant by that. Does that make more sense? And what do you think about it? So it's like, again, having that ability to ask things in a way that's not accusatory or blaming.
yeah. I was just listening to you, and I was thinking also about everything. But yeah, I agree. It's really important to communicate sooner when you're dealing with somebody with something. If you wait too long, it's gonna fester. It's gonna be in your heart. You're gonna be frustrated, angry, and if you just talk with each other calmly, no judgment, say, okay, this is what I feel, this is what's going on, and just have a decent conversation. Don't go into fights and say, no, you're not listening. No, it's you. why don't you listening to me? Just be calm. And if that happens, you need to ask yourself, maybe we need to go to see counseling or therapy. There's unresolved trauma or unresolved anger from our traumas or childhood that we need to sort out. That can also work. But effective communication, that's really key. And I'm really grateful that I had this conversation with you, Robin, because that really realized me that I really want to be a more effective communicator also with future relationships and especially with myself. But communication is the most important tool that we harness as human beings. So I'm really grateful to have this conversation. So I want to touch on a little bit about self-love before we're gonna slowly close the episode. So self-love. I remember when somebody told me you just need to love yourself, just love yourself and love who you are. I told myself, how? I don't know how to love myself. I didn't feel it. It didn't resonate with me. And to be honest, Robin, it was so difficult to really love myself. So why isn't so why is it in, so why is it so hard for people to love themselves for really truly who they are?
Because we haven't been taught. We've been taught that love is outside of ourselves, it's external, that if I get this, I'm going to be happy, I'm going to love myself. It's like if someone reflects that back to me. And yes, as babies, we see that reflection back, right? But we carry it on if we don't mature in our understanding of people are reflections back to us. And so if I'm not loving myself, then I'm going to see that reflected back. And I might be accusing them or saying or thinking to myself, well, they don't really love themselves. Like, why would they do that? Why would they do that bad behavior, whatever it was, like, drink and drive, or it doesn't have to be that extreme, but it's like they're in these bad relationships all the time. And because it's an old pattern that we can't see until we see it for ourselves. Because as we see when we work with people, it's like, I can tell you that, but are you going to really understand it? No, it's like those small moments where you notice that, oh, I'm being really hard on myself. What would I do to a young child? Would I tell them they're wrong? Would I tell them they're stupid? Would I tell them they're incompetent? Whatever it is. And that's really who you're being mean to, right? Is that young part of you that didn't get the love that they needed, or they got the love in a way that they couldn't understand. So you don't have that template of what love feels like. We don't understand that it really is about, yeah, we can have those different things happen, but it's coming back to accepting ourselves, to knowing we're okay in the moment, to giving ourselves a hug, or our young part of ourselves that didn't feel loved, giving that person a hug, because that's really where it starts. It's usually from that childhood where we didn't feel loved and we thought it was to be given out in these little pieces. When I was good at school and I would get a reward from my family, they're going to love me, whatever it is for you. And then it carries forward into your workplace where, yeah, if I accomplish all of this, then they're going to love me for this. But it's backwards, because it's like, yeah, I messed up, or I didn't take care of myself, whatever it is. And it's like, I'm just going to love me in this moment and know that I'm okay. That's what love is unconditional. It's not the conditional love. And to me, having a spiritual practice is really important for that, because we can feel that universal love. And the more we can do that, the more we can bring that vibration into ourselves.
Yeah, I feel the same really with seeking love outside of myself. For me, it was pornography. That was my coping mechanism. That was something that I had to deal with because I didn't feel worthy. So I was always trying to get love from somebody else or from women on a screen. I felt safe. I felt in a way loved because I felt connected. But I realized later on is the missing part that I had with my mom. I didn't feel any love from her when I was younger. I got rejected. So I really had to learn to love myself because I didn't get it as a child. So now I'm old. I'm now a grown adult. So I had to give that to myself. I have to say, well, Vincent, you're amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. Well, you're taking care of yourself. I was talking to myself how awesome I am, that I'm good and I'm really good and I'm good with making connections. Sometimes I have this troubling and sometimes I make mistakes, but it's okay. I'm a human being, and that's what I really learned how I talk to myself. And then we go back to the communication. It's really how you talk to yourself, but really feel it. Not just say I love myself, but really feel it. And do also what you said, the massage. I do massages on a regular basis because I'm taking care of myself, because I love my body. I need to do it because if I don't do it, I'm not feeling good. So self love doesn't mean I need to go spend time in the gym. It's also me go for a walk, like you mentioned, connect with nature, having great conversation with people, do the things that you like. If you want to go snowboarding, go snowboarding. That's also self love. But I always believed that I had to be with somebody to gain love or to feel love. And really, also a piece of chocolate. It's really the self love. You're giving something to yourself that you feel is important, or that's something that you enjoy. That's also a part of loving yourself, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like 6 chocolates. It can be
No.
right? And that's the thing. We often, because we feel that's missing, that's when we overindulge or become obsessed. In when my marriage was bad, I was working out like 3 hours a day. Not a healthy, you know, exercise could be healthy, but in moderation. It's the same with anything. So it's like you say, that nurturing, that caring for ourselves to say what would make me feel good right now? How can I love myself in this moment? What do I love about this? The more we can bring that passion and energy into things, the more that we bring forward that love. And so it's like, yeah, finding out, like you say, maybe it's snowboarding or whatever it is, but it's like, I feel so passionate when I do that. I really feel the love, the energy's good. And I really love myself because we have an inner critic, right? And that's what you're talking about, that inner critic that is these old messages from our youth that we're not good enough, you didn't win the competition, you're not as smart as your brother or sister, all these different things. And we internalize them as kids. And this is part of our work to self-love, is to unravel those, like you talked about, and say, are they true? Maybe they were to my parent or to that teacher, but that's not me anymore. I take responsibility for who I am, and I love that person no matter how funny or different that I feel in the moment, but I'm just loving myself through all of this, and it's just part of who I am.
And also accept who you are. You don't have to change yourself. You don't have to put a mask on. You don't have to become somebody that you're not. Just be yourself. Just don't. I mean, by like be yourself, but also achieve things. Also challenge yourself. Also do things that you're afraid of. That's also a part of self-love because you know you can do things better, or you can growing a business. It's also part of self-love because you want to do something, you want to achieve something, you want to create something. So that's also really important. So it's not about taking care of yourself, but it's also or getting love from somebody else, because I believe that was it. If I'm loved by somebody else, then I feel loved. But I had moments in my life that a woman was in my life, and I didn't receive any love. I was like, oh, so this is not it. I need to give it myself. The only person that can really take care of yourself and, like you mentioned, like fulfill your love is yourself. Because if you are so bound with this person and she stopped giving you love, you're like, oh, no, no, oh. I need to get her attention. I need to try to do things so she will give me love again. It will be this ping pong, and it's not real. If you really love yourself and this person doesn't accept you, doesn't respect you, self love is really say taking boundary. It's not gonna work. Just don't say bad things to her. Say okay, this is not gonna work. It's done. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing to feel good. I'm choosing to stand in my ground and feel good about myself.
Yeah, and allowing those feelings too, because there is going to be grief because there's an ending, whether we want it or not. Like I found that with my marriage ending, I wanted it to end. It was the right thing to do, but there's still that loss that's involved no matter what. Like when we have any transition in our life, anything like that, we still have to have the feelings because it's just part of us. And to say, yeah, I'm allowing myself to grieve this loss because often all those past losses that we haven't addressed, they're going to come forward. So allowing yourself that kindness and gentleness, and to me that is a big part of self-love, is kindness and gentleness and compassion for what you're going through in that time.
100%, and I couldn't agree more with this. It's really that's also what I had to deal with myself as well. When something I didn't do something or I was slacking, I got angry at myself. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I did this for my podcast? Why didn't I talk to her? And that's not self love. That's beating myself up. And yeah, the trauma was also part of it, but I had to be more gentle. I wake up with myself. I'm during the day with myself. I go to bed with myself. So the best relationship that I need to have is with myself all day. So beating myself up is not going to be good. It's not going to be healthy. It's going to be more frustrating. I'm not going to be feeling good. I have no energy, and I can put my energy in other things. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and bringing that to our attention. There's one thing that I want to touch on, Robin, and then I'm going to with the last two questions that I want to ask you is what really breaks my heart is when I see parents be angry at their child. So if she does something wrong or they lash out like, "Why are you doing this?" and "Why don't you look at this?" And I'm thinking, don't you see what you're doing here? You're putting so much fear into this child. You put your traumas, the things that like you mentioned also in your past, you're now putting it on your child. And this is going to be over on generation and generation and generation until he or she says, it's enough. I don't want to have this trauma response. I don't want to have this circulation of trauma in our families. But what can you say to the parents that are frustrated or that children is not doing what they want to do? What can you tell them for them to really say, okay, you need to slow down, take a deep breath, and really think before you say something because they're really damaging their child, right?
Yeah, it's osmosis. We're sponges, especially as kids. So we're taking it on. And like you say, that's one of my big things. It's like what we're doing in the work is breaking those patterns, right? When we can choose differently. And we're going to continue those patterns if we don't do something different. And unfortunately, we're not giving parenting classes. We're not, unless something goes wrong. That's the wrong time to be doing that. Like, why aren't we offering more services to people going into being a parent and say, yeah, there's some skills that you could use. Like when we see parents who are healthy, we see that they can separate the person from the problem, right? And they can say to the child, I love you, and this behavior you did was not correct, right? This is being able, and that's what kids need to hear, is they are not the problem, it's the behavior. And this is how they learn to take responsibility. So and I feel for parents because often what will happen as the child goes through their growth, it's going to trigger parts of them at that age that they didn't get what they needed. And so They can feel really sad. They can feel angry. They can have all these different feelings. And then it comes out in the parenting. So having the emotional intelligence to say, I'm not doing a great job here. I don't like what I'm doing. And instead of, like you say, beating yourself up, taking that whip and whipping ourselves, which is what our parents did and we took on, it's like, what skills do I need? What can I learn? Can I read a book on parenting? Can I listen to a podcast? Like, there are resources out there if you don't have the money for particular trainings that you can look up. Nonviolent communication, for example, different things, understanding. And I think that was important for me, even though I didn't become a parent. When I trained in psychology, I did like children and youth, I did teenagers, I did all geriatrics, like I did all those ages to look at those stages in our life. So if we understand what's going on for that child at that age, we can build some understanding and compassion. So the 2-year-old that's really frustrating, maybe it's some independence they're trying to exert because they're able to do more things. The 4-year-old who's, it's all about me. And, we can get stuck in these different levels as we mature if we haven't dealt with it properly. And we see people going back their stages of maturity, some of the work that's done around that, to look at those stages. Like for myself, I did somatic experience therapy because my body didn't learn some of the reflexes that, like, I missed those stages because of the type of upbringing I had. So I went back and did the somatic therapy to integrate those parts of myself. So these are some of the more advanced things that you can do. But it's really about stopping the self-blame, feeling the shame. Shame is one of the biggest emotions that we don't understand, that is really just telling us we feel bad about being human. And so if I can get beyond that and see shame for what it is, I really feel shameful that I yelled at my kid, that I did this or I did that. So that kindness for ourselves, that compassion, I'm doing the best I can do. What can I do better, differently next time? And what are some resources I might need? And this is where, if you're in partnership, important to do together so you're on the same page and you're both learning a skill. Maybe one goes and reads one book, you read that book, and you come together and say, this is what I learned, this is what I learned. What can we do together to implement something, rather than the old way of talk to this parent, talk to that parent, and they change the other person's decision. And then it just causes more conflict. And the child feels they can get away with things because one parent's going to be more lenient than the other, instead of them coming together as a common front.
Yeah, that I agree what you said there, Robyn. And what I want to add is, when child are being in a rebel state or they're doing something that you don't like, have this awareness. Shouting to your child is not going to help. It's going to be angry, or it's going to create. Also, what I've seen with myself was, when I did something wrong, I get shouted. So I was like, oh, so every time I did something, it's not okay. And this created me of not doing anything. I was really afraid to ask for something. I was afraid of doing something. And it took me years and decades to finally ask for something that I want, or ask for help. And it was because I wasn't listened to. Then we go back again, listening. But shouting to your child is not going to help. If you are being angry, don't leash it out on your child. He will presume, like Robyn said, it's his fault or her fault. So he will think, so daddy and mommy doesn't love me. And it really breaks my heart seeing children going through like that. it's really painful for me to see that. I'm getting emotional because it's not their fault. And what parents don't see is they will traumatize the child, and they will grow up in fear. It will grow up in not feeling loved. It will grow up of in loneliness. And what happens is they will, if they're so lonely, they don't feel heard or being neglected, they see one way out and they will end it. And it's so devastating for me to see that, and other people too, also parents as well. I've seen documentaries that parents had to go on the streets and say, you need to stop bullying because their child killed themselves. They hanged themselves because they couldn't handle the bullying,
Yeah.
because maybe of trauma or something happened. So really, not just for parents or future parents, but really do something with your traumas. Do something with what's been happening to you. Because if you're not, your child will go on a path that you don't want to go. And shouting to your child, be angry at them, is not the way. You have to talk to them. You have to be more willing to understand what's going on with your child, right, Robin?
And plus, if you model correctly anger, they're going to learn how to deal with anger too. And it's like, yeah, I can feel like this is something I find when training with conflict resolution that people don't understand. We have that feeling come up, but how can I just take that pause and that breath before I actually express it? So I still might express the anger, but I'm doing it in a healthy way. And I'm saying, I'm angry at what you did here. That's not okay. You're still okay. But still, there's that place where the more we model it, like you say, the more we're going to learn the correct behaviors so we can break those patterns.
And also, children are children. You're not talking with an adult or with a full grown adult here. It's children. They make mistakes, they do things that you're maybe, I like to say, or I hear people say, they really get under my fingernails, or I want to push them in the wall and just put them there and just leave them there. But it's really, when you're triggered, it's really back to trauma. And
Yeah.
it's like Robin said, you really have to learn to communicate properly to your spouse, everybody around you, but especially toward children. So, yeah, Robin, it was a really powerful episode. I really enjoyed talking to you. I've learned so much from you, and I had just these last two questions. So, the last question, or the last two questions that I want to ask, the first one is for men that are listening to our conversation. How can they start with their journey, especially with self-love? Because that's priority number one. Really start to learn to love with yourself, but really communicate. What are the tools or tips that you can give to them for them to start working on themselves with the self-love and the communication?
I would say the number one to anything is being curious. How can you be curious about yourself and your reactions, how you're feeling, what you're doing, those thoughts in your head, all the different things that you're doing, and see them from a different perspective. It's and instead of the shame or the blame, like allowing those feelings. So being curious, what am I feeling? What's happening in my body? What are my thoughts? And turning that into, how can I accept this in myself right now? And just accept and be kind and compassionate as I would to anyone else. You might be really good at doing it for others. How do you do that for yourself? So really taking the time with yourself. If you can, a simple practice in the morning to just reconnect with yourself, checking in with what's going on for me. So it's really building that self-awareness and capacity to tune back into that kindness and compassion for yourself, because that creates the love. That's a loving thing that we do for ourselves. So the more I do it, the more it becomes automatic. And forgiving myself when I'm not doing it, because we're not going to be perfect, right? Remember that little one, that child. If you need a picture of yourself at a young age, put that on your fridge and say, who am I being mean to at this point? How much do I love that little one? Or if you have a pet or something that gives you that unconditional love, it's an energetic, it's a vibration you can tune to.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's also the lesson for me, to have compassion and really learn to have the unconditional love towards myself. No matter what happens, no matter what I do, always say, it's okay. It's okay. I love
Yeah, and at the
myself as the way I am.
Yeah, and still being accountable. Like you talked about action. Awareness is great, but at some point there needs to be some action, whether it's just taking care of yourself more or expressing it, like you were talking about communication, whatever that is. So if it's all just sitting there without any action, we're not going to change anything. We need that action.
Absolutely. Yeah. Action changes everything. And there's a saying, action creates reaction. And that's true. Yeah, you can sit on the couch and sit with your feelings. It's good, but also maybe it's also good to go out for a walk, or write in your journal, or write in a blog, or whatever. You also need to do something. We're creators, so we can also create. So that's also a really good point that you mentioned, Robin, is taking action. So yeah, taking action is really important and really powerful. The last thing that I want to ask, and I always ask my guest this question, is what was the most difficult thing that you had to go through, and what was the most powerful thing that you achieved in your life?
Hmm. I would say one of the most difficult was when my mom and I left my dad and brother. I was about 5, and we went back to be with her parents. They were immigrants. They didn't speak English, so I didn't really have communication with them. And then my my mother attempted suicide again. And I lived with my cousins for a year. And it was really scary because I didn't know if she would come back or not. And so in one way, it made me very independent. In the other way, I shut my feelings down. So that was really a really difficult situation. As far as what I really appreciate is how I've been able to allow the feelings, allow myself the growth, to make myself important to myself, to love myself, to be out there supporting others, because I believe in giving back. I believe in community. And the more I do that, the more I'm living my life. Like I found the first half of my life, it was like dealing with everyone else. And then the second part of my life is what's important to me. How can I give back? What and how can I help both myself be more of myself and others be more of themselves, and to be able to deal with the conflict and tensions in their life.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really, really appreciate that you share this with us, and also show, even though when life is hard, it's difficult, still there you can change your life. You don't have to sit there and be in this victim mode, like, oh, I cannot change it, I cannot do anything about it. You change your life. And yeah, you're very inspirational. I really enjoyed the conversation with us. And I really enjoyed my time with you, Robin. I've learned so much from you. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity that you gave me to learn from you, to share your story, your knowledge, and your wisdom. So thank you so much for being here. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I've enjoyed our discussion as well.
So for the listeners that are interested in working with you or learn from you, how can they be in contact with you, and how can they follow you?
Lifeofchoice.ca, because I'm in Canada, is the kind of more interpersonal, individuals and couples, and then positiveteamengagement.com for teams. And I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, And those are the main spots where I am. And I love to take pictures of nature. So my personal page is lots of lovely pictures.
That's good. That's good. That's also what we need to do more, right, Robyn? Before we're gonna end the conversation, is be grounded, be in contact with nature, right? That's something that we're so now in the modernized computers and telephones, but we're just getting closed off from nature, right?
Yeah, and it helps us to see perfection in a different way. So many of us are recovering perfectionists. If you look at nature, it doesn't have to do anything to be perfect. Like I love seeing a flower from the seed to when it's kind of falling apart. Like I love that transition. And to me, it's beautiful and perfect in all the different phases. And I think that's a lesson that we can bring into ourselves.
Absolutely. Nature can teach us many, many things in life. Nature can be hard, but it can also be really gentle, and that's what we need to do with ourselves. Be gentle of who you are. You're just a human being. You make mistakes, and just say it's okay, and I learn from it, and take action on the next adventure that you want to take. So the last thing, Robyn, you also had a free gift for the listeners, right?
Yes, it's a meditation and it's about relationships. And so it helps us kind of look at the triggers and what's going on. And what I've done is there's certain spots where you can stop. So I like again to talk about capacity. So maybe you do the first part and it's like, okay, that's enough for now. I'm going to reflect on that, or I feel that's enough for now, and then gradually you might do the rest of it. So there's no push to do it all at once, because this is an approach I feel is important when we're dealing with self-growth, is taking it step by step and allowing us to integrate instead of just pushing through. And it's like, I need to learn it all at once. No. So it's about building the relationships you really want.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for your time. It's been almost 2 hours. I really, really appreciate that you took the time with us and sit here with us and give us so much value. I've learned so much from you. I know what I want to work on. It's really my communication and really have non-verbal communication, not this intense, but really, if there's an intense conversation, I have to learn to diffuse it and say, okay, let's talk later, or see it from both ways. So I really want to thank you. I really needed this conversation with you to really see what I really needed. So I'm really thankful and grateful that I got to meet you and had this conversation with you. So before we go off, is there something you want to say, something you want to add before we're gonna close off the episode?
I always like to close with my mantra that I learned from conflict resolution training, and it's be curious. All behavior makes sense, at least to that person. So how can I be curious to find out what's going on for them? And to me, when I'm off track, it's like back to the curiosity, whether it's with me or someone else.
Powerful, yeah, that's really powerful. So thank you so much. That's also something that I have to learn. Be curious with life, with other people, but especially with myself. So Robyn McTague, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for giving so much value. It's been an honor having you here. I was been looking forward for having you on the show. Thank you so much again, and it was an absolute blast. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
So, guys, thank you so much for watching. It was a really powerful episode. So, if you like more of what I'm doing, like and subscribe to the How to Heart Show on YouTube. You can also follow me on my social media. I also post my journey there as well. And yeah, that's it. So, guys, thank you so much. And don't forget, love yourself and live from the heart. So, take care and all the best. Bye.
Hey Lions, thank you for listening. Glad to have you on our journey to the authentic self. Want to learn more to embrace your potential? I invite you to keep listening. Do me a favor and smash the like and subscribe buttons, as this helps the show reach more listeners who need to hear these messages. See you next time.